now I want to move on to a different topic, a topic of spirituality. So science and spirituality often conflict with each other, and Deepak was talking about this earlier. Naturalist Stephen Jay Gould once called science and religion non-overlapping magisteria. They're two different but separate modes of knowing, with science as a way to know the natural world and then spirituality as a way to get to know the supernatural world. But religion and atheism, are they just dogmas like any other? Does spirituality get in our way of being good scientists? And is spirituality a prerequisite for caring about each other? So to discuss these topics, welcome to the stage the creator of the Human Network and author of Girl in the Woods, Aspen Mattis. And joining her with Deepak and Michael is host of the popular podcast, The Thinking Atheist, Seth Andrews.
Oh boy, okay. Science and religion, science and spirituality. Well, I think often these debates turn on what you mean by words. So what do you mean by religion? We already kind of deconstructed that a little bit. I think spirituality is an even more loaded word. Like, I think of Carl Sagan as one of the most spiritual people I ever met, and yet he was a hardcore materialist scientist and an agnostic, maybe an atheist. So I'd like to throw it to Aspen, start with you. What do you think of when you think of spirituality? You went on this long journey, 2,500-mile hike. You must have thought about, what does it all mean, or what am I doing? The stars above and all that. Nature kind of does pull you back to that sense of spirituality.
Yeah, absolutely. So I walked 2,650 miles alone when I was 19 years old through the wilderness of California and Oregon and Washington State. And what I really discovered out of that was the connectedness of everything, and how just really the connected nature of humanity, but beyond that, how nothing doesn't affect everything. And how powerful we are because of that.
What was
There's
that?
nothing that doesn't affect everything.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Yeah.
So everything affects everything. Yeah.
Everything affects everything. That's a yes.
So, and there is something about being out in nature that draws that out. Like Sagan talked about, billions and billions of stars. It kind of makes you feel small. Is it that you feel small or connected or in awe of it all?
I would say that you begin to ask really basic questions that are the same questions that 2-year-olds ask. Like, what am I? Why am I? Why am I able to wonder what I am? And the same questions that, when you ask when you're a little kid and you ask too many whys, like one too many whys, people are like, because. Well, now you have some time to get in to the heart of the core of, like, the foundation of your 2-year-old self.
So what did you decide that it all means? If you did.
That I know nothing. No.
Okay, all right.
No,
That all knowledge is ignorance.
All knowledge is ignorance. Okay, yeah.
yes, exactly. Yeah, so, and I think that we have, like, right now in our society, we glorify certainty. And we associate uncertainty with weakness. And that's a terrible mistake, because uncertainty is the necessary precondition for all discovery.
Right, well, that is, yes, absolutely. I mean, people think of skeptics as cynics. It's the wrong affiliated word. I don't know how those got overlapped. It's just that. It's just we don't know. It's humble before the universe. Just we don't know everything. And one of our messages is it's okay to say, I don't know. And one of my favorite little poems from another intellectual hero of mine, Richard Feynman, is when he was a kid, I wonder why, 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 I wonder. And that's kind of like your hike out in the woods, that we all kind of experience that. Seth, you have a very popular, probably the most popular atheist skeptic podcast there is. So you've dealt with these big questions as a regular thing. I mean, what we always get is, well, you're an atheist, so you can't be spiritual. Or why would you be moral or good or care about anything? How do you answer those?
Well, I came from a culture that if it was good, it was spiritual. And in fact, if you look at dictionary.com and you look at the word godless, some of the definitions for godless include wicked and evil. How can you be good? How can you have meaning and purpose? And, you know, when I was in the faith, I used to be a Christian radio host. I was a Praise Jesus broadcaster for a lot of years, right? And I went through this sort of examination, and I came to this weird realization that beyond all the dogma and all the teachings that made no sense, I realized that, you know, life doesn't need a higher power, the idea of a higher power to be precious. It doesn't have to be eternal to be amazing. In fact, the temporary nature of my life has actually made it more meaningful. Someone said, well, if you don't live forever, why bother? Why aren't you just a nihilist? And I'm like, well, you know, I had dinner last night. It was delicious. But it was temporary, and I was hungry later. And I saw a great movie. It was over after 2 hours. I shouldn't have paid the ticket. I loved someone who died prematurely of cancer or something else. Maybe that love wasn't worth having because it was temporary. And I just came to this realization that, you know, my small speck of an existence in this universe is still existence, and it should be celebrated. And it's something that I never take for granted. And it was when I left the idea of spirituality and rooted myself in the real world that I began to really live life. So that's what happened to me.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes from Wittgenstein, which I use as an epigram in a chapter in my next book on the afterlife, was whether or not there's an afterlife, the real question is if there is, what problem does it solve? What's the purpose of the concept at all? Why does that bring meaning, or why do we need that? You know.
Well, does the idea of a perpetual existence negate the meaning? I mean, the idea that day after day, if there is such a thing as day in eternity, but it's just over and over, it's infinite. Does it then become sort of a feedback loop of meaninglessness? And I don't know the answer. It's probably a rhetorical question more than anything, but, you know, if the Christian idea of heaven to me was you go to heaven and you go before the throne of God and you sing perpetually, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. And I'm like, can I go to hell? You know,
forever you have to do this.
I'll take hell. Yeah. But any kind of eternal existence, does the eternal nature of it, does it make it meaninglessness? I don't really know.
Well, you know, Hitch said, Christopher Hitchens, that, you know, that the Christian version of heaven would be like celestial North Korea. You know, you got this dictator that knows everything you're thinking and doing. I don't want to live in that kind of place. I remember I had a college professor that when I was a Christian too, and I was proselytizing to my philosophy professor and telling him about heaven. And he said, "Are there tennis courts there?" You know, I mean, it would just be boring without some challenge like that.
I do like the idea of spirituality. I mean, I know people use the word spiritual to speak about sort of the transcendent things, the birth of a beautiful child, or, you know, the day you met your love, or something like that. And I mean, if people want to use that type of language, I don't have a problem with it, you know.
So Deepak, your version of the afterlife is we just return, if I recall, we return to the state of consciousness we were before the material manifestation of our bodies. Something like that, right?
Can I ask a question?
Uh-oh. Here we go.
So, where is yesterday now?
It's in memory.
But it's not here, right?
It's gone.
Where is 5 minutes ago?
Well, the neurons still may be forming connections for the memory of that 5 minutes. It's in flux.
Where is 1 second ago?
With you in that chair.
So I'm actually responding to him.
Yes.
And the answer is birth and death happen to experience in every moment. A thought is born, it dies. A sensation arises, it dies. A perception arises, it dies. So birth and death are happening to experience all the time. You were a child, that child is dead. You were a teenager, that child is dead. This is your afterlife right now. So you quoted Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein, and based on the idea that no experience is graspable. Does everyone get that? The past is not graspable, the future is not. Even now is over. As soon as I say the sentence, the end of my sentence, the beginning of my sentence is over. So Wittgenstein said, we are asleep, our life is a dream. But once in a while, we wake up enough to know that we are dreaming. And what we wake up to is the timeless awareness in which experience happens in every moment that we call now. This is an experience, it's not you.
Well, we
I hope
must
you'll-
experience the next block. I'm so sorry. But I'm glad you didn't ask the question of, is there a God? Because most of the people would know in this room that, yes, there is a God, and his name is Bernie Sanders. So thank you, Aspen, for your quote about all curiosity being the means of knowing. Can I get a round of applause from everyone in the room for Aspen Mattis and Seth Andrews?
Thank you, Seth.